Welcome to The Good Work, a podcast and video series that follows The Event Company, an event design company that specializes in corporate, nonprofit, and social events. Our passion lies in creating one-of-a-kind events that share the good work of organizations we are fortunate to collaborate with. Tune in for conversations with leaders of these great groups, our best advice for your next event, and some behind-the-scenes moments. Now, let us show you the good work. For this episode of The Good Work, get out your favorite boots and cowboy hat as we welcome Ryan Eichler to the office. Ryan is the president of the South Dakota Cattlemens Foundation, and he joins us to discuss the Primetime Gala. Each year, the South Dakota Cattlemens Foundation hosts the Primetime Gala in concert to raise funds for Feeding South Dakota to help end one of South Dakota's largest problems, hunger. Stay tuned to hear about how this event comes together from start to finish. Please join us in welcoming to today's vodcast, Ryan Eichler. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today, talking all things Cattlemen, Primetime Gala, boots.
Yeah, hats.
Booze, hats.
No problem. Glad to do it.
Yeah, Ryan Eichler of the South Dakota Cattlemen's Foundation. Thanks for being here. So talk to us a little bit about the South Dakota Cattlemen's Foundation and the mission, really, of the organization.
Yeah, so our mission is kind of twofold as we put the foundation together, and obviously it started kind of with the Primetime Gala. And the first part of that mission was to kind of let people know where their food comes from and do a little bit of education for the public, because I think in today's society, consumers have a lot of questions about where their products at the grocery store come from. And so we felt like that was a big part of our mission. And then the second is really to support the beef industry in South Dakota. We've got actually the biggest share of agriculture, which is the state's largest business. The biggest share of that is the beef business. And so we wanted to support that through some education opportunities as well as some other programs for the industry.
So why do you feel like our community doesn't understand or know that information? And the reason why I bring that up is so many times it's always you get what you get from TV or YouTube, or you see it on social media that beef is bad and all these things, and beef in small consumptions and non-GMO, GMO this. So I know that the foundation, from working with them for the last 4 years, is trying to help improve that educational piece.
Right.
Why do you think consumers are so trapped kind of in that hole of social media and the information that they hear?
That's a great question. I think the biggest reason for a lot of the question is because we're now literally 3 generations away from the farm, right? If you think back to our generation when we were younger, and definitely our parents' generation, if they weren't directly involved with agriculture, they knew somebody who was, and likely that person was a family member. And so I think as the farther we get away from production agriculture as a society, we tend to question what happens on these operations. And to be really honest, that's probably the right thing to do, right? Is food and nourishment is pretty essential to daily life. Yeah. And you want to make sure that the things that you're putting in your body are the right things. And so I think part of this trend in food and some of the questions that get raised, I think there are certain people involved in social media that take small nuggets and really turn them into big ideas. Most of it's done with an agenda of whether it's welfare or their perception of environmental sustainability, when in all actuality, there's a ton of science that shows that beef is not only nutritious, but it's also sustainable as a production system. The amount of livestock that grazes land that can't be used for anything else really creates an ecosystem that's integral to our well-being. And so producers have done a tremendous job of not only using some of that land that can't be used for anything else, but they've created this production system that's tremendously efficient. And I get pretty passionate about it, as you can tell. And
calm down.
I know, I'm trying. But I think the message is really clear that the science speaks to the nutrition benefits of beef, and that the industry is really sustainable.
I find it interesting, you and I have talked about this for several years now, and just different conversations of whether it's Chipotle or, I just read the other day where they're trying to produce hamburgers that are plant-based, but they smell and are supposed to taste like it, but it's a plant. Stuff like that just boggles my mind. And
I find the best thing to mimic that flavor and appearance is actual beef.
Really?
And the nutrition benefits are clear, right?
Yeah.
Not only is it the most efficient at delivering protein to the human body, but then you've got the vitamin and mineral component to beef that doesn't exist anywhere else in plants. And so, and I think those types of things are trendy. I don't think there's as much long-term sustainability in those types of products.
Yeah, interesting. Well, you and I met back we were just talking about this. I think it was back in 2013.
It was.
Yeah, and I think it was on the urging of Sarah Mogg, our dear friend, saying, you were crazy, Ryan Eichler. You think you're going to put on a show by yourself. Good luck.
A big show.
And you and I met for coffee that day. And first of all, I thought, what the heck are they trying to do, first of all? You've got this group of farmers, producers that are just trying to put on a big show. And at that time, we were talking, a couple hundred people, right? And talk about how the Primetime Gala came to be.
Yeah.
You had talks way before then when we met. So talk to us about kind of the process and why the foundation wanted to form a gala.
I'll never forget. In 2013, we were at it was 2012. We were at an industry function, and where a lot of good ideas get discovered is at the bar after the meeting.
Oh, of course.
And so
karaoke. I've heard. Yeah, you.
Well, we're going to leave that part out of it. But the interesting part is. The message was kind of clear that we needed to do something as an industry to take our message outside of our industry, because we do a great job talking to one another. We don't do as good of a job talking to the consumer. And so we knew we had to do something. A couple of our neighboring states have a big beef event similar to the Primetime Gala. And so we loaded up in a car one day with 3 of us, and we started at a hotel in town. And by the time we got done, our last stop was at the convention center in what was the arena prior to the Sanford Premier Center. And we just decided at that last stop that if we were going to do something, it should probably be big and require some planning. And so that was the day that the idea of the Primetime Gala was born. And the rest is history, I guess. So
why Feeding South Dakota? Obviously there's a tie with food, but why Feeding South Dakota? Because there's a lot of groups that do food. There's the banquet. You and I've talked, American Heart Association always talks about the protein benefits of heart disease and beef and all those things. So there's a lot of groups that focus on food, but why Feeding South Dakota?
Yeah, I think we examined a few of those charities just because we felt we needed to do our best to find a charity that did good work, but was also efficient with the dollar. And we really felt like the food tie was really important, because the first year when we picked those guys as our beneficiary, they delivered 12.5 million pounds of food that year, and only about 4% of it was protein. So we thought, here's people that are in need. And when we talk about hunger in the state, it doesn't always probably relate to scarcity, but really the quality of the folks' diet. And so we know what an integral part protein plays. Feeding South Dakota had a great story to tell from a delivery standpoint. They deliver in all 66 counties in our state. But the thing that was also very comforting, and what we've really enjoyed working with those folks, is they turn that dollar into so much food. It's almost unbelievable. And so they operate on about 2% of their budget, and the impact that they made in the communities around our state is inspiring.
Yeah, it's incredible. I know that from us working with them over the last few years with the foundation, it's interesting to see, because hunger is not what I think people think it looks like. It is our neighbors, and it's the woman sitting next to us at church. It's our little kids who go to school with those kids who don't have enough food, so they've got the backpack program. And I think it's really interesting to see over the last 5 years now, it's well over 270 ton of beef that's been back into our state, which is incredible.
Yeah, and when you take a look at what beef costs at retail, it's one of the most expensive food items to buy. And so when they're doing it at $1.30 or $1.35 a pound, it's really impressive. And what feels good about that is they're making a huge impact with the donations that we were able to provide.
So going back 5 years, talk to us about the first gala itself. Like, what did you think? I can tell you what I thought. I mean, when I first met you guys, I drove to Huron in the middle of pretty much a snowstorm. My windshield wipers were not working. I had to stop at some auto store in Huron to actually fix it. And I remember coming in that room, first of all, super intimidating. Like, you're not intimidating, but you have Todd Wilkinson, who's this 6-foot mammoth of a man, big belt buckle, big hat on, attorney, CPA, all these things. You got all these guys sitting around the room and ladies, and you're coming into this not knowing really what's going on. And I don't think you did really at that point. I mean, you knew what you wanted to do, but for us, it was super daunting and thinking, gosh, could they do this? Are they going to pull this thing off?
Well, I think we had a vision, obviously.
Yeah.
And the one thing that if you're around agriculturalists much is that they're very driven, right?
Yeah,
and especially folks in the beef industry.
Yeah.
They didn't get to where they were, and they're not still in this business because they didn't accomplish goals. And so when we first started planning for that first event, we had a very specific goal in mind of raising $100,000. And we had no idea how to get there in terms of the actual event planning. And thank goodness we found you. But we knew we had a really great base of donors to get that project started. And we knew if we structured it correctly that the industry would turn out for the event. And so the two components of sponsors and attendees, we knew we had a good base there. And other than thinking I was going to have a heart attack the night of the first event, I went off really without a hitch. And at that time, when 940 people showed up, we thought we had hung the moon, but we had no idea how fast it would grow after that.
Yeah, I remember being in that room, and I was sitting at one of the back tables, and I think Christy Noem actually came up to me afterwards. She goes, "Thank God those guys found you, otherwise they would be eating hot dogs tonight." Like, you just don't do that, right?
No.
And it was incredible and it's not about us. It's about the good work that we do throughout the community and all these people's lives that have been affected over the last 5 years. Did you ever imagine we'd be where we are right now with the gala and all the attendees and the dollars that have been raised? I mean, you're talking $966,000 that's been raised in 5 years.
We had no idea.
Yeah.
And we knew after the first event was over that we had done something right because we had a tremendous response from all the attendees, all the sponsors.
Yeah.
We knew that the second event was going to happen the next day.
Yeah.
But what we probably didn't expect was the snowball effect of new people attending in year 2 and them telling their friends in year 3 and in year 4 and in year 5 when we topped 1,600 people. We just had no idea it would grow that quickly. And so it's the area where we live and the people that we work with, they are what make this event. And our sponsors are obviously a huge part of it because they give of their time and resources. They donate tremendously valuable items for these auctions that, quite honestly, we couldn't do without them. But I think the really cool part for me is 1,600 people want to be there that night. And it's really what makes it go round. Yeah,
it's incredible to see. Not only, I remember year 2, we were getting ready for a press conference, and I think we sold out like within a couple of days of tables. Yeah. And to be honest, for those of you that are listening or watching, every year this guy and Todd Wilkinson try to push my limits and push that room a little bigger. One year we bought a bride out actually to take part of their space. I mean, we will try anything.
Investment.
We will try anything, but just to try to get more people in there. And I think that's the impactful piece about what we're doing because it goes beyond the gala. It goes beyond getting all dressed up. It's beyond the concert. It's about community and what we're doing throughout the community. I want to hear more from you about the educational piece of it because that's what we talked about and that's what we started talking about. Education and community, why we do what we do.
Sure.
Why are you so passionate on the educational side? Because this also plays to, if you can talk a little bit about our scholarships, because we're well over $1 million really raised if you take into consideration our scholarships and things like that we've done. So if you can talk a little bit about what that education means to you and why you're so passionate about that part.
Yeah, I think as an industry group whose concern is with the future of our business and making sure that it's viable for generations to come is there needs to be a next generation to take over this business. Anybody who's ever been around livestock production and farming knows that the average age of the producer is probably in their 50s. And so now is a very critical time as land and cow herds start to change hands into the next generation, we really need to be concerned with training our next generation of leaders. And so we started the scholarship. I think this was the third year that we presented those scholarships. And not only the response to the scholarship, which has been good, we've had plenty of applicants apply for those scholarships, and that's a great feeling in and of itself. But the message we get back from Gala attendees, sponsors, just ordinary people every day that we visit with in our day jobs, the industry is really supportive of that program because they understand the importance of not only the educational piece of that, but also developing the leadership skills that go along with it.
Yeah,
and
it's passing of the baton.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that we're going to introduce this next year with an actual cattle feeding program for young people, I'm really excited about that. It's a way for people who may have never been exposed to that facet of the industry to take part in it and really learn something valuable.
And isn't it awesome to see those people that maybe did not come year one because they just didn't understand what was happening, and they are not from the industry at all, and they came year two, and now they're coming every year, and they're bringing people too.
For sure.
I mean, that is a huge testament to the foundation and creating the awareness and getting out in the community. And the foundation is involved in a lot of different things, not just the gala. So you talked about the competition, which is awesome, and the contest. Talk to us about the burger feed that we also do. This is something I think we both are super passionate about. I brought my kiddos this year, which were naughty, and they were taste testers.
They were great.
A lot of beef and some chips.
That's right.
But talk to us about those things, because that's, I think, another side that not a lot of people get to see.
Right, and I think it's the part of the side that our foundation probably doesn't keep top of mind. And so we raise a lot of money, and we see the statistics of people that are impacted by the donation and the 900,000 plus pounds of beef, the $900,000 and the 600,000 pounds of beef that's been procured to date. The real impact comes when you're standing there grilling for people who come to the food giveaway at the fairgrounds. And for me, it was a pretty kind of emotional experience year one for sure, because these people who need this food are young people, young families, children, elderly, and it's really something that we live in a community with that big of a need. And that need stretches far beyond Sioux Falls. And so I think it's a great look into the impact that we're having. And it feels really good to know that that product is in such high demand and in such high need, and we're able to provide it to people who need it the most.
Yeah. Do you remember that family that first year? Both of you, I think, were really emotional. That young woman who her kiddos, I think she had twins and then another one, and iron deficient, and beef was what they needed, and they did not have a lot of it. Her husband was working other jobs. They had come from, I think, North Dakota, right? Somewhere. And it was listening to their story that makes what we do all the difference. I mean, it's not just the
she
gala,
had three kids with her that day, and I've got three little boys at home, same age, and so it was very impactful for me to know that not only are we very fortunate in the lives that we lead, and we live in a state where most of us are very well taken care of, but raising this money and procuring those pounds of food, that really struck me pretty hard, and it meant a lot to me to be there.
So outside of that moment, would you say there's any other big eye-opening things that you've learned these last 5 years?
In terms of the donation?
How to work nicer with female event planners?
I don't know about that. But
I would say in terms of the event itself, I mean, it's grown so much, and there's a lot of things that you've learned. I mean, you've industry-wise.
Well, here's what I've learned. The biggest takeaway from this is obviously we know what Midwestern people are like, but we've raised almost $1 million, right, in 5 years. And when we started this program in 2014, it was probably the best year in the history of beef production. Prices were sky high. Everybody was doing extraordinarily well. And for about 3 out of the next 4 events, the agricultural economy has been terrible. And we continue to break attendance records, and we continue to raise more money than we had the year before. And I think that, to me, that's a huge revelation of what kind of people we get to deal with every day in food production. And that's the kind of story I don't think folks really understand is we toss around this factory farm and a lot of the connotations that come around with large scale agriculture, but these are real people and families that live on these operations. And not only do they work through really difficult economic times to put food on the table for consumers. But then they're generous enough to come and spend money on top of what their daily costs are to give back to the communities. And so for me, it's these people who attend that event and spend their money and buy auction items. It's an inspiration. Yeah, and we've always talked about this. It's not about us. It's not about the industry. It's about what we're all doing, and we're coming together for such an incredible cause. And it's helping our neighbors literally across the street. So it's incredible. Yeah. It's a feeling that we'll never be able to replicate. And or I didn't think we'd be able to replicate it, but every year when we walk into that room and it's full of people and it's become the kind of the industry reunion, it feels great to be there. I talked about it in our first episode about how there's not a feeling when you get on stage. And I just think of the Toby Keith concert. You know, we're getting on stage, getting ready to do this check presentation of $200,000+, and you look out of the crowd and you see 10,000 people there, right? All for what you're doing. And they're in support of the cause, but they want to help too. And getting them involved, whether it is an auction item or buying a concert ticket, there's so many ways that people can have such an incredible impact on their state and their neighbors. But it's all from one little idea back in 2012. Yeah. Isn't it crazy? I'm sure glad we drank that beer. Well, Ryan Eichler, thank you so much for joining us today on The Good Work. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I got to say, this event wouldn't be possible without the work of your company and the event company, because it's really a mountain of a task, not only because of its sheer size, but because of the strong wills you get to work with in the process. We call it herding cats some days, with lots of different personalities that like whiskey. So, I mean, it's... For sure. Yeah. It's a win-win for all of us. That's probably pretty accurate. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Good Work. A special thank you to Ryan Eichler for joining us and talking all things Primetime Gala and the incredible work that the South Dakota Cattlemens Foundation does throughout our state. You won't want to miss next week as our team breaks down birthday parties. And in many cases, these are some of our youngest and most interesting guests of honor. Don't forget to subscribe to The Good Work on YouTube and iTunes, and follow the event company on social media to stay up to date on The Good Work we are part of each day.